Well, hello everyone. It's me, Scott. That's right, that guy that you occasionally stumble across on YouTube in very awkward positions. After uploading part 2 of the Trick or Treat Studios Halloween 2018 mask tutorial video, I realized, I really should go with showing you how I do it. But I keep on trying to think of, if you're just now wanting to do your first rehaul, you may not have a scale at home. So that was my thought process then. But in all honesty, I'm like, you got to show them how you do it. That way they can at least get a feel for it and they can go their own route. So I probably should at least show you this part as well. So I don't want you to think that I'm being dishonest with you. Believe me, I used to do it that way. I would just get a measuring cup, like if put a quarter cup of the RD407, a quarter cup of latex acrylic paint, and then a quarter cup of water. And that way it works just perfectly fine. It really does. But then I got to thinking, I just want to get scale because I need a scale like this for so many other different things. Naturally, for paint, for shipping, even the so-called diet I was going to try. And when it comes to stuff like this, especially when you get more involved, maybe someday I'm going to need the scale for more special effects makeup or God knows what. So I invested in a scale, and this thing was only like, was it 15 bucks or something like that at my local grocery store? Yeah, at a grocery store. It's in the cooking, like hardware section where, where you can get cooking utensils. And so if I can get it at my grocery store, that'll tell you how easy it is to find. And let's face it, this day and age, most people do their shopping online anyway. So anyways, what you do with something like this, if you don't know how to use a scale on these, you pretty much set an empty container, in this case, on the, scale. Right now it's not showing anything. Let me turn it on. Okay, right now, let me try this again. I want you to see it. Let's go to 0. I'm at ounces. Oh, by the way, you can measure different units. Like right now, I've just got it set for ounces. You can go to grams. And then, of course, was it milliliters? But I like to have it at ounces. So what you do, in this case, like this is empty, you set it on there, and it's going to weigh it out at 1.5 ounces is how much it weighs. So I'm going to set the tier to 0 at this point. So it's basically just going to subtract 1.5 ounces. And now I'll go ahead and add, in this case, some acrylic latex. I started working on this a little bit ago, but I'm like, nah, like I said, I'm going to show you. And I'm probably going to do, I don't know, maybe about 6 ounces. Now, I could use a funnel if I was smart, which wherever I laid it at, it's somewhere nearby. Now, I know you can't see it, but I'll grab my phone so you could actually see the results. Now, this is going to take a little while because obviously the paint is thick. So I'm not going to have you sit here and watch this long and boring process. Well, I totally screwed up. Not this, for video purposes, I screwed up. I wasn't thinking. I took this off the scale, or actually reset the scale, I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh no, don't do that. What are you doing? You're trying to measure. Well, without doing a video, it's not a big deal. I remembered that this container empty is 1.5 ounces. So like I stated before, if you've got a scale, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I set it on the scale, hit the tare, get it back to 0. Now that I set it on the scale, and I'll show you with my phone now, it shows that it's 0. So naturally, all I have to do is put 4 ounces of the RD407. So if I take this off, you'll see it go back to minus 5.5, which that adds up completely. 4 ounces plus 1.5 is going to give me 5.5. So, should go back to 0. There we go. Not a problem. So now, so now I'll go ahead and add 4 ounces of the RD407. And I'll try not to reset the scale. But either way, this works out just fine. It kind of gives me an easy way of just looking for 4 ounces at this point. I want to try to stir this up a little bit. I try myself personally avoid putting anything in here. And it should be good. So I know I got to order some. I'm thinking about actually getting a gallon next time because it is getting colder and I don't want to run into any issues to where any freezing issues. Now this should, let me start right over here. It's more of a clean side. Oop, the scale turned off. Damn it! This has an automatic feature, which I can appreciate because I don't want the batteries to run down. There we go, 0, perfect. In other words, just to be on the safe side, minus 5.5, perfect. Like I said, the bottle 1.5, and with 4 ounces in here already, it should be minus 0.5. That way, when I set it on the scale, 0. I know I'm repeating myself. I just want to make it very clear. All right, here I go. Like I said, I just want 4 ounces of the RD407. There we go, 4 ounces. All right. Now, here comes the easiest part, adding water. So, simple math even for me. 4 ounces of water, this should be at 8 ounces once I'm done. $12 ounces totally got it, 12 ounces. So I'm gonna shake this, actually put this lid on there. I don't need the scale anymore, so I'll put it aside. See, so much easier to weigh it instead of measuring it. All right, now that I pretty much have this all right here together, my latex, the acrylic latex, the RD407, and of course the water, I'm gonna shake it up just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. Then I'm gonna let it sit for about 10 minutes. And then after that, I'm gonna actually add some ink to it because I wanna kind of tone this down. Remember when I was talking in part 2, if you watched that video, I talked about how I use the acrylic ink to give me my tone. All right, now I'm gonna finally start painting this guy. But before I do, and I promise not to go on for 10 minutes before I start painting, I'm gonna go ahead and answer a couple questions that I remember seeing in the past. First, I remember a couple of people asking what type of air compressor I use when I airbrush, which is what I do most of the time. I bought this air compressor, which I'll show you here on the screen. It's a very common model with different names, of course, different manufacturers, or either that, they just all have they investment in this air compressor and they put their sticker on it. But I bought this air compressor on Amazon. It was actually an airbrush kit that I bought, and it was a good deal. It was a hell of a deal at the time. In fact, you'll see probably to this day really good deals with this type of air compressor. And I'm gonna warn you now, the airbrushes that come with it, it's a good way to get started if you've never airbrushed before, but generally airbrushes that are cheap, you get what you pay for. So keep that in mind. So yes, if you've never airbrushed, you definitely want to take some courses on it. At least watch some videos, you know, for beginners and all that, and you can go from there. I highly recommend it. But the air compressor alone is worth the value. If you have a Harbor Freight nearby, I highly recommend you go check out Harbor Freight. They've got great deals, even the airbrush kits there as well. Same thing with the airbrushes, they're pretty cheap, but still the money that you pay for the air compressor alone is well worth it. So there you go. I hope that answers your question, if you're still watching, that is. I've got a hair dryer I'm going to be using, so I recommend you use your hair dryer through these steps through each time you paint on the mask. Doesn't matter if it's very warm outside or whatever, you want a hair dryer, which if you've watched the other tutorials, it won't be nothing new to you. And you want to make sure that you wipe down your mask at least one more time. I had already done that. I was trying to get some of this stuff prepared real quick because that way I didn't go on and on and on. And I'm actually using this alcohol here just to wipe it down because I figured there might be some dust particles or whatever. I'm still using the same. Let me disconnect it from the air compressor. No, I don't want to do that because I got this hose on really tight. I'm going to put another lens on my camera because I want to have my camera further away, and you will actually see what I'm using. I used it in the HK tutorial. It's the same thing. I bought this at Harbor Freight. It was a kit that came with like 6 different little, they're like, here, I can at least take this off. This piece right here, of course it doesn't want to focus. And I'll put a picture up on the screen here just so it makes more sense. I bought the kit. that you see here at Harbor Freight. Very affordable, very easy to work with, and naturally, of course, I put the base coat inside the container. There's a little tube, and of course the top. All these pieces are so easy to clean. So with the base coat, where you don't have to worry about a needle or anything like that, just a simple overspray, this is perfect for it. So let's finally get started. Oh, and by the way, a little surprise. I'm going to try something for the very first time. Well, I did this a long time ago, but I was using different methods and it just didn't go as well as planned. So I'm going to do an experiment for the very first time, and I'll explain as I go along. That, and let me switch lenses real quick so I can have this camera further back. All right, we turn this air compressor on. Should be good to go. Hopefully good to go. There we go. Now, what I normally do, and I'll try my best to get it on screen here, the top piece right here, obviously where the paint comes out, I tighten it all the way to the very right before I actually start spraying any paint. Then I naturally start loosening it to the left, lefty loosey, righty tighty. You can always count on me for having that tongue getting in the way. All right, a little bit more. Okay, that should be good. Now, start at the top or the back, just to see how it's gonna, if it's coming through decently. Now here's what I'm experimenting with. Instead of putting a white base coat on right away, I'm going with like a gray. I was going with black, but I ran out of the black acrylic ink, but you know what, that's okay, this is fine, because I'm obviously gonna cover this another base coat with the white, but I want to get a gray, a dark base coat on here first. Now this stuff is a little thinner than I want it to be, but that's fine. I should stop right now because it is thin and I don't want to have any of this paint to start dripping. This is why I have my hair dryer. I'm going to put it on low. I don't want to get too close to it, so you shouldn't even see it on the camera. Now you do, now you don't. And I just want to go over it very lightly, especially here on the right side, because it's pretty wet right now on the right side of the mask, the left of your screen. Now as you progress along, the more you put on the mask, the paint that is, you can find yourself getting a little bit more aggressive with the hair dryer. It's just that first base, that first layer that you put on there, that right there could make or break you. And I'm noticing that it's pretty wet. Thankfully it's not too thin, and you would know if it's too thick because it would start dripping. Now I'm noticing right now as well, right here on the cheek, there might have been a little bit of latex that hardened up, little chunks that came out. That's okay, I'll let it stay on there. I don't want to try to pull it off now. Learn from my mistakes. I'll wait till it dries and then I'll remove it. It's not a big deal. Because if I do it now, I'm just going to get I'll smear it with my fingertips or a Q-tip or anything like that. Sometimes you'll find hairs that you thought you cleaned off on the face of the mask. Just let it dry before you remove it. Trust me. These are the mistakes that I learned from. Now I'm going to crank this hair dryer up. And you'll be able to see with good lighting with the hair dryer that where you painted, it starts drying up. All right, I'm going to put some more paint on this bad boy. I think you get the idea of how to do this so far. It's very simple. It's probably the easiest part when it comes to painting your mask. Put another coat on there. Don't stand too close, by the way. In other words, don't get your air gun, your paint too close to the mask, because then you'll definitely get some overspray. And when you're in an environment like this in the garage, it's so much easier to control because obviously you're not going to have any wind blowing your paint around, or in a basement, or if you're fortunate enough, a workshop. Yeah, it's so much easier. Okay. Now I'm using an old tripod, by the way, to do this. Use your best judgment on what you can use. But if you got an old tripod or some stand, microphone stand, an old one, use that. And I just got, you could probably tell some grocery bags underneath this mask. Just, if you're like me, if you can find ways to do things cheap, then by all means do it. Okay, hair dryer once again. Pretty exciting stuff, huh? Never thought I'd see a Myers mask look kind of grayish. But there's a point to all this, hopefully. All right, one more coat, then I'm gonna stop the camera and focus a little bit more on what I need to do. And that is, I wanna pay closer attention to some of the other spots, like underneath the chin, because I know right now you probably couldn't see it, around the ears. I just wanna pay more focus because, yeah, I'm trying to do a tutorial video, but I wanna make sure that if anything, I accomplish a goal here, and that's, you know, refinish this mask and hopefully look somewhat decent. Correction, it was about an hour and 13 seconds that went by. So now you can see that I'm adding in that white base coat that you see me in the first part of the video, measure it out on the scale. Yes, the white acrylic latex, Krylon white acrylic latex, and the RD407 distilled water. But off camera, I added just a little bit of that Naples yellow. So I was wanting to give it that tone. I'm like, wait a minute, don't waste too much of your ink, because remember, and this is what I'm thinking to myself, you're gonna add that gray. It turned out great because I ran out of some black ink. See, I'm always running out of this stuff, so I got to go to Hobby Lobby this weekend and get some more stuff. But yeah, I made a base coat that's grayish, and if this experiment works, then great. If not, it's not going to fail me too much because it's still the same method that I used for the white, you know, when it comes to 3 parts. So I still got plenty of this base coat that I would normally use. Let's say hypothetically I didn't add that gray, then I would have had about 6 to maybe 9 coats of the base coat. That's what I normally always do, and in between, as you can see here, I use the hair dryer. Now I'll talk more about this experiment on part 4, you know, what I'm trying to accomplish, if it worked or not. It's not a big deal, but sometimes you got to take these risks. And the more you work with these masks, you'll learn from your mistakes on what sort of, you know, experiments you can do, and, well, hopefully they don't crash and burn as much. But, yeah, sometimes you just got to take these risks and just, you know, try something different. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let this mask set for a good 24 hours before I start working on it again for a couple reasons. First of all, I just want this latex to really settle into the latex mask. In other words, the paint into the latex mask. And most likely, as I look at the mask 24 hours from now or the next day, it's going to look a little bit more bright than what it did when I initially sprayed it on, and that's common. I mean, anytime you do paint, like imagine you're painting some walls, it's usually going to get darker or brighter once it's completely dried. I'm trying to remember that actual theory on different colors, but yes, it's going to look different after it dries. That, and I want to be able to look at it with fresh eyes, which leads me to the second point. You know, imagine you're at work all day or at school, and then you start, you know, working on your masks. You're tired, not to mention you were possibly in a garage around paint fumes. You need to get some rest. You want to look at your mask with some, you know, some well-rested and, you know, new perspective, you know, of how it looks. So you owe it to your mask and you owe it to yourself. So when I talk about patience, yeah, you got to have some patience when you're working on this stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty much finishing up here, drying this up, and then in part 4, we're going to start adding some wash to this mask where the details pop out a little bit more. So that's what you get to looking forward to in part 4. So if you like this sort of stuff or anything that I've done so far, and if you have not yet subscribed, then please hit that subscribe button along with that notification bell, because hopefully it will notify you the next time I do like part 4 and 5 and 6. Dear Lord, the rate I'm going. No, I won't scare you. It's not going to be 20 parts on this. I'll try to mix it up a little bit more. So that being said, folks, you take good care of yourself, and I'll see you soon. Bye.